You can please move on to number five.
The last thing is also very broad. I said you have to be open and honest about sex, sexuality, modesty, and how to relate to men. And obviously, this is specifically for young girls, for girls going on to young women, and so on. I think that this is funny. It's I see it in the African American culture, and I see it in my culture, which obviously is in an African country. Is we have a thing about just don't talk about it and just avoid certain topics. And yet, those topics sometimes end up being the most important things in our lives. You don't talk to your kids about sex, and she shows up pregnant. Well, why are you surprised? You didn't tell her. So she had to just kind of figure it out. And we all know that our brains don't fully mature until we're 25. So if they're trying to make these decisions by themselves and they don't have your input, they don't have the openness and the honesty. And again, it goes both ways. It has to be an open dialogue. They have to be able to ask those questions, and they have to know what's their place in society, what's their place in a home. Another thing that I see is people don't know how to overcome conflicts. They don't know, young women don't know how to relate to young men. They end up becoming wives who don't know what it means to be a wife and how to relate to your husband. Basic things like respect, being respected, reciprocity, compromise, negotiation, all these things are lacking. And then we're like, oh my God, I can't believe the divorce rate is 50%. Well, of course. They don't know how to overcome conflicts. They don't know how to respect each other. They don't know how to treat each other. And these are things that you have to not only model, but you also have to teach. And again, it's from a young age, and understanding. I have a little more conservative view, of course, in terms of sex and sexuality. I believe it should be off the table, but I don't think talking about it should be off the table. I think you should discuss it extensively, and you should get to a point where you trust your kids to make the right decision because you know that you've had open dialogue with them. You know that they understand where you stand, and even if they make the decision that doesn't necessarily match what you want, they're making a sound decision based on being informed, being educated, and being confident about what they're doing and why they're doing it and what they want out of their lives.
Mm. I love it. I think you can talk to your kids about sexuality without necessarily having to tell them about your sexuality. If that's what you're worried about, you don't have to tell them what you're doing in the bedroom, but they're gonna eventually figure it out, right?
Of course.
I think when you talk about sex being an important conversation, there are few conversations that are more important. There are few things more important than love and sex and lust and all that because that's how we got here.
Right.
There's almost nothing more important than the thing that created you. So this is love and sex. As much as we want to wish them away and just say don't do it, that's one of the most powerful, most magnetic forces in the history of the universe. It's the foundation for the creation of all human life. So when your children hit puberty, they're going to start to feel certain things, and somehow in our society we've defined them to be bad and dirty, which they're not. But they're very powerful. And what I say to my kids is that I'll never judge your sexuality, but understand anything that's powerful requires responsibility. And so when you are just doing whatever you want to do and seeking pleasure or whatever it is you're seeking, understand that a human life may come out of that. A real person, right? That's just one of the most amazing. That's one of God's most amazing magic tricks. That this thing that we associate with all this sort of dark, seedy stuff,
Stigma.
right? The stuff we stigmatize in mass scale leads to the creation of these beautiful little babies, who become adults, who then later on, 20 years later, start asking questions like, did you and mommy even know each other when you, you met? Right? So, what was going on? How come I never had a daddy? Or how come I mean, kids grow up and they
Right.
ask. So I just told my kids as honestly as possible, but it's so awkward. So what I find is that by leaving my own stuff off the table, like, I don't get into the whole like, well, this is how your dad does stuff. That's weird.
Right.
But I think just sort of maybe for me as a father, it's like, conversations with my girls like, let me tell you what guys are thinking. Let me tell you how you teach a man to treat you. Let me tell you, that you shouldn't be ashamed of of your natural makeup when it comes to
Healing.
sex, right? But at the same time, just be responsible because there are consequences for all the choices that we make. And then even then, sometimes our kids still do stuff that doesn't make any sense, but at least they can go into situations with their eyes open. And I think that's the key. Because you see so many of these kids that never, where their parents never talk to them about sex, and they end up in the worst situations.
They
I mean,
do.
they get the most STDs, they have the most unwanted pregnancies, they the most abortions, and it's like, whoa,
Because they're driven by curiosity
yeah,
and experimentation because they have no other source of information. And they have nobody to bounce those ideas and feelings off of. So yeah, that is very important. And
well,
speaking of not taking your own
actually
initiative,
they do bounce the ideas off their friends at school, and
right?
or
Not the right
right,
sources, right?
or even worse, the girl bounces the ideas off of her boyfriend, who gives her his own suggestions and
Yeah, I'll
stuff.
die if we don't do it. Yeah.
Right, right, exactly. But please continue.
Now I was gonna say, one of the you said leave your stuff off the table, but I actually believe that again being open and honest, of course, how appropriate anything is changes with how old the kids are. I actually like my kids to see affection, tenderness, and all these things because then they understand that. Again, there I've seen young women who've been abused, molested, and things like that, where when a man touches them, not in a sexual way, their reaction is very unusual. Or where they've just never had anybody touch them in a non-sexual way, so that now they think every touch from a man is sexual. So that's why I'm saying it's very important to have clarification and have a model in the home. Like they should see that you hug people, you caress them, tenderness, caring, loving, all these things, so that they carry those things forward. It shouldn't be a totally foreign concept. And then understand that as you get into a more serious relationship or a permanent relationship, then other things become more appropriate and you have those conversations. So, it's a very, very broad topic, but again, it's very important, I think, to put that on the table. And the main thing is just being open and being honest and encouraging them to be open and honest. And for goodness sake, we need to stop shaming children. Or even young adults. We just need to stop the shame part of it. Just remove the shame and just have open dialogue and have comfortable conversations, and that will go a long way.
Well, I agree. I agree. I don't see too many examples where shaming actually works. I think shaming is something that's very natural for a person, only causes them to move it further underground. And then, when that thing finally manifests itself, it just comes out in all these awkward,
Weird way.
unhealthy ways. And I just don't think it works. I don't think it brings you closer to your kids. Well, I'm gonna say thank you for this information. This has really empowered me, and I'm gonna go through the list. I was taking notes and paying attention. Just so people can get a recap, you said that there should be confidence boosters in the home, constant confidence boosters, which I believe is kind of a strong emotional fuel to get through this tough world. Positive affirmations, so that these confidence boosters are actually put into action. Because sometimes we know what we need to do, but it's different to know. There's a difference between knowing what you need to do and actually doing it on a regular basis. I mean, really having it
Right.
part of your habit, right? Most of us will say something like, "I know I need to eat healthy," but we may never do it, or
Obviously.
we may even write out our diet, but our day-to-day lifestyle is not consistent with our plan, right? So the affirmations are good in terms of taking those confidence boosters and drilling them into the subconscious, so that it becomes a part of who you are. Learning should take place all throughout their lives. Constant learning, constant education. Money management and wealth building. You don't want your child to go through life depending on other people to get the things they need. And then that important conversation about sex and love and lust and the creation of human life. Make sure your child is gets their sexual education from you and not her boyfriend, because he's gonna tell her the wrong stuff. Well, thank you very much, Nomalanga Moses. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, boys.
Yes. All right, everybody. This is once again Nomalanga Moses from HealthyBlackWoman.com and SuccessfulBlackWoman.com, and she's given us some great tips on how to raise healthy, successful, and prosperous young ladies. Me, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black Education, and until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. We are gone. Peace.